The bright orange box arrived on my doorstep exactly 2 days before my sister Vanessa's wedding. At first glance, it looked elegant enough. It was wrapped in glossy white paper with a silky ivory ribbon tied into a perfect bow. A small card rested on top, my name written in Vanessa's familiar, graceful handwriting. For my dear sister, can't wait to see you shine on my special day. I stared at the note for a long moment, unsure whether to smile or feel suspicious. Vanessa and I had never been close, not in the way sisters were supposed to be. Growing up, she had always been the center of attention, the beautiful golden child who could do no wrong. Teachers adored her, boys followed her everywhere, and our parents practically worshipped the ground she walked on. I was simply Elena, the quiet older sister who existed mostly in Vanessa's shadow. Still, when she'd asked me to be one of her bridesmaids, I'd allowed myself to believe things had changed. We were adults now. Surely she had outgrown the petty cruelty of our younger years. I carried the box into my apartment and set it carefully on the kitchen table. For a brief second, excitement fluttered inside me. Vanessa's wedding was going to be the social event of the season. She was marrying Daniel Whitmore, heir to one of the wealthiest families in the state. The ceremony would be held at the luxurious Whitmore estate, attended by politicians, business leaders, and local celebrities. Maybe this dress was her peace offering. Maybe this was her way of including me. I untied the ribbon slowly and lifted the lid. My stomach dropped. Folded neatly inside was the ugliest dress I had ever seen. It was a violently bright shade of orange, so harsh it almost hurt my eyes. The fabric was cheap and stiff, with oversized puff sleeves and an awkward, shapeless cut that looked like it belonged in a discount costume shop. And it was enormous, at least 3 sizes too big. I held it up, disbelief washing over me as the dress sagged heavily from my hands like a giant orange curtain. There was another card tucked inside. Oops, the bridal boutique mixed up your order. There's no time to fix it now. Please wear it anyway, it'll still look lovely on you. Love, Vanessa. I read it twice, then a third time. A familiar knot tightened in my chest. Vanessa had always hidden cruelty behind sweetness. She'd mastered the art of making her insults sound accidental. Her humiliations looked like harmless mistakes. I grabbed my phone and called her immediately. She answered on the second ring. Elena, did your dress arrive? Yes, I said flatly. It's 3 sizes too big and orange. There was a dramatic gasp on the other end. Oh no, seriously, that stupid boutique messed everything up. Vanessa, I'm so sorry. She interrupted quickly, though her voice carried a strange brightness. But I'm drowning in wedding chaos right now. There's no time to order another one. I stayed silent. Then she sighed heavily. Please don't make this harder for me, Elena. Just wear it, it's only 1 day. That sentence hit exactly the way she intended. It's only 1 day, as if my discomfort was selfish, as if objecting would somehow make me the difficult one. After we hung up, I stood in my tiny kitchen staring at that ridiculous dress. I should have refused. I should have walked away, but years of being told to keep the peace had trained me too well. So on the morning of the wedding, I stepped into the oversized orange dress. As I looked at myself in the mirror, swallowed by yards of neon fabric, one thought echoed in my mind. Vanessa wasn't finished humiliating me. This was only the beginning. The drive to Whitmore Estate felt longer than it actually was. Every red light gave me another chance to turn around, go home, and change into anything else. A dozen times, my fingers tightened around the steering wheel as I imagined calling Vanessa and telling her I refused to be her joke for the evening. But I already knew how that conversation would end. She would cry. She would tell our parents I was trying to ruin her wedding. They would call me selfish and dramatic, just as they always had whenever I dared challenge her, so I kept driving. When I finally pulled into the circular driveway of Whitmore Estate, my stomach twisted. The mansion looked like something out of a magazine. White marble columns framed the entrance, crystal chandeliers glowed through towering windows, and the gardens were overflowing with white roses and silver lanterns. Luxury cars lined the driveway, and elegantly dressed guests drifted toward the entrance, laughing softly as though they belonged to another world entirely. And then there was me. The orange dress hung awkwardly from my shoulders. the oversized waistline making me look twice my size. The puffed sleeves stuck out like inflated balloons, and the cheap material wrinkled around my body no matter how many times I tried smoothing it down. The second I stepped from my car, I felt the stares. A woman near the fountain paused mid-conversation. A man glanced at me, then quickly looked away. Two teenage girls whispered behind their hands. My face burned. I forced myself to keep walking. Inside, the wedding coordinator rushed toward me, her polished smile faltering when she saw my dress. "Oh," she said, blinking rapidly, "you must be the bride's sister." I nodded. Her expression shifted into careful professionalism, but I caught the flicker of confusion in her eyes. "This way?" She led me toward the bridal suite. The moment I entered, the room fell silent. Vanessa stood near the mirror in a breathtaking ivory gown, every inch the perfect bride. Her sleek dark hair was pinned with diamonds, and her makeup made her look almost ethereal. For half a second, surprise flashed across her face. Then came satisfaction. "Oh, Elena," she said sweetly, "you actually wore it." A few bridesmaids exchanged awkward glances. One of them, Chloe, bit her lip as if trying not to laugh. "You said I had to," I replied. Vanessa tilted her head, pretending innocence. "Well, it's not that bad. At least orange is cheerful." The bridesmaids giggled softly. I swallowed hard. Our mother entered moments later, adjusting her pearl necklace. When she saw me, her mouth tightened. "That's unfortunate," she muttered. Vanessa said the boutique made a mistake. I said, Mother gave me a warning look. "Don't start today." Of course. The ceremony began an hour later. I walked down the aisle behind Vanessa's other bridesmaids, painfully aware of every whisper and sideways glance. The orange fabric practically glowed under the soft white lights. Standing beside my sister at the altar felt unbearable. Guests kept staring. Some looked confused, others looked amused, and Vanessa noticed every single reaction. I caught her smirking more than once. Still, I endured. The ceremony ended, applause filled the estate, and everyone moved to the grand reception hall for dinner. I prayed the humiliation was over. I was wrong. Halfway through dinner, Vanessa rose to give her bridal toast. She smiled radiantly at the guests. "Before I thank everyone," she said, lifting her champagne glass, "I think we should all acknowledge my brave sister Elena." The room quieted. My pulse quickened. Vanessa's smile widened. "It takes real confidence to wear a dress like that in public." Laughter rippled across the room. Some people chuckled nervously, others laughed openly. The sound hit me like a slap. My face burned hotter than ever. I stared down at my untouched plate, willing myself not to cry. Then Vanessa added the final blow, but I suppose every wedding needs a little comic relief. The laughter grew louder. And just as I thought, the floor might swallow me whole. A firm voice sliced through the room like a blade. "That is enough." The laughter stopped instantly. I looked up. At the head table, Daniel's grandmother was slowly rising to her feet, and the expression on her face told me everything was about to change. The entire reception hall fell silent as Margaret Whitmore rose from her chair. Even at 82, she carried herself with an elegance and authority that commanded instant respect. Her silver hair was swept into a neat chignon, and the navy silk of her gown shimmered under the crystal chandeliers. But it was her expression that made the room freeze. She was furious. Her sharp blue eyes were fixed directly on Vanessa. For the first time that evening, my sister's confidence faltered. "Grandmother," Daniel said softly, half rising from his seat. Margaret lifted one gloved hand, silencing him without even glancing his way. "No," she said, her voice calm but firm enough to cut through the room like steel. "I believe something must be addressed before this celebration continues." A ripple of unease moved through the guests. Vanessa forced a laugh, though I could hear the tension in it. "Oh, it was just a little joke," she said brightly. "Everyone's having fun." Margaret's gaze never wavered. "Humiliation is only amusing to the cruel." The words landed heavily. Several guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. I sat frozen, my hands trembling in my lap. No one had ever defended me against Vanessa before. Not publicly, not privately, not once. Margaret stepped forward slowly, her heels clicking against the polished marble floor. When Daniel announced his engagement, she said, turning to address the room. I took the liberty of learning more about the woman joining our family. Vanessa's smile returned, though shakily. Well, I hope your research was flattering. Margaret's expression remained unreadable. It was illuminating. The room held its breath. She turned her attention to me. In the course of my inquiries, I also learned about Elena. A murmur spread across the hall. I felt dozens of eyes settle on me, Margaret continued. I learned that while Vanessa was attending university abroad, Elena worked 2 jobs to help cover tuition expenses after her family's financial hardship. The color drained from my mother's face. My father looked down at his folded hands. I could barely breathe. Margaret wasn't finished. I learned that Elena sold her car so her sister could accept a prestigious fashion internship in Milan. Whispers erupted among the guests. Vanessa's face had gone pale, and I learned, Margaret said, her voice hardening, that these sacrifices were neither acknowledged nor appreciated. A heavy silence followed. I stared at her in disbelief. How could she possibly know these things? Margaret looked at Vanessa. Tell me, dear, did your sister also accidentally sacrifice for you? Vanessa opened her mouth, then closed it again. For once, she had no clever response. Margaret turned toward the crowd. Character reveals itself not during hardship, but during triumph. Tonight should have been an opportunity for generosity, gratitude, and grace. Her eyes sharpened. Instead, the bride chose cruelty. A low wave of murmurs spread across the tables. I saw guests exchanging uncomfortable glances. Some shook their heads, others looked openly disgusted. Then Margaret did something I never expected. She walked directly to me. Every step she took felt surreal. When she reached my table, she extended her hand. Elena, would you stand? My legs trembled as I rose. She took both my hands in hers. They were warm and steady. My dear, she said softly, loud enough for everyone to hear, there is more dignity in your silence tonight than in all the pageantry surrounding this wedding. My throat tightened. I could feel tears threatening. Margaret smiled gently. For months, my foundation has searched for a director for our new Women's Leadership Initiative. The room stirred with surprise. The Whitmore Foundation was one of the most respected charitable organizations in the country. Margaret's eyes met mine. I would like to offer that position to you. Gasps echoed throughout the hall. I stared at her, stunned. Me, I whispered. Yes, she said firmly, because compassion, humility, and strength cannot be taught. They must already exist within a person. Across the room, Vanessa looked as though the ground had disappeared beneath her, but Margaret wasn't done. She turned toward Daniel, and what she said next would shatter the wedding completely. The silence in the reception hall was so complete that I could hear the faint clinking of crystal glasses trembling on nearby tables. Margaret Whitmore turned slowly toward her grandson. Daniel stood frozen beside Vanessa, his face pale with disbelief. For a long moment, Margaret said nothing. She simply looked at him with the same sharp, unwavering expression that had reduced some of the most powerful business leaders in the state to nervous silence. Then she spoke. Daniel, marriage is not built on beauty, wealth, or appearances. Her voice was calm, but every word carried through the grand hall. It is built on character. Daniel swallowed hard. Margaret's gaze shifted briefly toward Vanessa. And if this woman can humiliate her own sister in front of hundreds of people on what should be her happiest day, you must ask yourself what cruelty she is capable of in private. A collective gasp swept through the room. Vanessa's face flushed a furious red. This is ridiculous, she snapped. You're ruining my wedding over a stupid dress. No, Margaret replied evenly. You ruined your own wedding the moment you chose humiliation over kindness. The words struck like thunder. Vanessa turned desperately to Daniel, reaching for his hand. Daniel, tell her she's overreacting. But he stepped back. The movement was small, yet devastating. The confidence drained from Vanessa's face. Daniel, she whispered. He stared at her for a long moment, pain and confusion clouding his features. Then he spoke the words no one expected. Did you really do this on purpose? Vanessa's mouth opened and closed. It was just a joke. Daniel's expression hardened. A joke is funny when everyone laughs. His eyes flicked toward me. She wasn't laughing. The room remained painfully silent. Then Daniel loosened his bow tie and took a slow breath. I can't do this. Vanessa froze. What? I can't marry someone capable of this kind of cruelty. The words hit her like a physical blow. Her champagne glass slipped from her hand, shattering across the marble floor. No, she gasped. Daniel, don't do this. But he had already stepped away. The guests erupted into stunned whispers. Some rose from their seats, uncertain whether to stay or leave. My parents sat motionless, their faces pale with shock. For once, they had no defense for Vanessa. Margaret turned back to me. Her expression softened. My offer stands, Elena. Tears filled my eyes, but this time they were not tears of humiliation. They were tears of relief, of validation, of finally being seen. I glanced around the room. Vanessa stood alone in the center of the chaos she had created, her perfect wedding unraveling around her like thread. For years, she had believed she could control every narrative. She had believed she could diminish me and remain untouched. Tonight, she had learned otherwise. I looked down at the ridiculous orange dress swallowing my frame. Just hours earlier, it had felt like a symbol of shame. Now it felt like armor. I straightened my shoulders and smiled. I accept, I said. Margaret squeezed my hand warmly. 1 year later, I stood on a brightly lit stage at the opening ceremony of the Third Women's Leadership Center, funded by the Whitmore Foundation. The audience applauded as I stepped to the podium. The work had changed my life. For the first time, I had purpose that belonged entirely to me. After the ceremony, a reporter approached and asked the question I had come to expect. What inspired this journey? I smiled. An orange dress. I said simply, months earlier, Vanessa had sent me a message. I never meant for things to go this far. I never replied. Some apologies come too late. As for the dress, I kept it hanging in my closet, not as a reminder of humiliation, but as proof that sometimes the very thing meant to break you becomes the reason you rise. And every time I saw its ridiculous neon fabric, I smiled. Because my sweetest revenge had never been ruining Vanessa. It had been becoming everything she never believed I could be.